Great. So just a bit of housekeeping, our agenda for today. I'm just going to welcome everybody, and then we are going to jump right in. We're going to hear from Rob Klee, who is going to be, if you do join the FDCE program, your first lead faculty of the Clean Energy Policy course. And so excited to have you be able to hear from him all about who we are, what this program is about. And then after Rob kind of introduces the context of the program, then you're going to hear from Heather and Trent. Why don't you go ahead and wave, Heather and Trent? Our dynamic delivery duo here. These two folks really help keep all of the wheels turning in the FDCE program. They're there with you every week, every day of the program, guiding you through it. And they just do a wonderful service to all of our learners, and really great people. So I'm super excited for you to get a sneak peek at the program itself, and to be able to ask questions of and hear from some of our core members of our staff here for the FDCE program. So they'll give you a little bit more insight. Heather and Trent will give you a little bit more insight on what it's really like to be a participant in the program. And then we have also invited Chris Caldwell, who is not quite here yet, but is an FDCE alum, and he will give you some, share his perspectives on the program as well before we get to our question and answer session. So without further ado, and thank you all for your patience with us and the technology. I'm going to be advancing the slides for everybody. So Robert, maybe you can get started and first introduce yourself a bit.
Sure, happy to. So nice to virtually see everyone this afternoon. I'm Rob Klee. I'm a lecturer here at the School of the Environment. And Coral, you can go to the next slide. So as Coral mentioned, I'm the sort of policy segment lead. That is part of my background. I was the Commissioner of Energy and Environment in Connecticut before coming back to Yale, but I have a long history and a really sort of joyful history of I did a lot of my academic life was here at Yale, and so it's really nice to be back. But I wanted to talk and sort of start today and talk a little bit about us, the Center for Business and Environment at Yale, which is this joint initiative between the School of Management and the School of the Environment. And what we're so excited about being us, the Center for Business and Environment, CBAE is what we call ourselves, is that we get to leverage the incredible network of faculty, alumni, partners with diverse experience and perspectives on both the business and environment sides of Yale, to really create some phenomenal sort of intersections and programming. And that's what we've been doing here for over 15 years at CBAE, which is really educating and inspiring that type of interdisciplinary sort of leaders in business solutions to help solve major environmental problems. And clean energy deployment is one of those really big ones. And that's what we're going to mostly talk about today. But the folks that you'll see at CBAE and the students that we work with, I affectionately call nerds and nerdy. That's for us. We really love taking those sort of explorations into this rapidly changing world and finding ways that we can solve some really big sort of problems. And this transition to clean energy is, to us, this critical element of that sort of question, particularly in the larger context of climate, which I'll talk about. And that's why we created the Financing and Deploying Clean Energy program, to align something that we're passionate about, the urgency of the issue, and get all of you out there excited. So next slide. We really realized pretty early on that all of you who are out there working in the working world, and you're out there changing markets and business models, you're in financial institutions, you're in policy roles, you're in community settings, all the things that you're doing out there If we could help you pivot, direct, and sort of motivate your energy and your passion and your sort of work life into the deploying of clean energy, we would have this huge sort of opportunity to leverage all of your amazing talents with this goal of accelerating the deployment of clean energy so we can address the climate crisis. And that's why we made this program. Financing Deploying Clean Energy, our certificate program, is really designed to create this network of purpose-driven individuals from all different sectors that we know are critical to addressing climate change and accelerating the deployment of clean energy. So if you go to the next slide, Coral. So why now? And this, I use this image from Ed Hawkins in the courses that I teach here at Yale, the climate stripes. I've now seen these on clothing and Fashion Week and cars and like water. Like he made actually a Creative Commons sort of license. He's encouraged folks to take this on. The punchline is we're on the red side of the climate stripes. This is depicting global annual temperatures from 1850-ish to today. And you can see this sort of steady march towards a warmer world. And it tells us we need to act. We need to do something to reverse the red end of the spectrum here. Next slide, you can actually click, I think 2 or 3 times, 3 clicks. Boom, boom, boom. So the visual image is supported by the major scientific body on climate change, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. They've released over the last few years a series of reports that paint an increasingly stark picture. And this is starting in 2021, the science assessment that climate change has already begun. There are significant changes happening to our global systems and that we can't undo. And this points the finger at us. It's our human activities that are the cause of this gargantuan output of greenhouse gases that is leading towards this major climate system disruption. Fast forward to 2022 in February, that was the IPCC's report on the impacts and vulnerability. And in their classic British way, and Chris, you'll appreciate this, I like quoting the BBC, they had 5 takeaways. The BBC said, it's worse than we thought. Loss and damage is real, and it is particularly in the most climate vulnerable communities around the world. And that's outpacing our ability to adapt to climate change. Technology, 3, is not a silver bullet. 4, cities can offer hope if they are pushing the envelope and moving quickly. And 5, there's a small window for action, but it's closing fast. The last report from the IPCC came out it's 2024. I'm having trouble with sort of acknowledging that fact. It came out in March of 2023. That was their synthesis report that gave, it's pretty grim reading, that sort of overall, the sort of summary of the devastating consequences. And right on the heels of that report came the Global Stocktake Report under the Paris Climate Agreement and the United Nations Environmental Program's annual emissions gap report, all of which are basically, I'm a professor, I give people grades. We got a collective grade for our current status of our climate efforts, and it's not good. We're getting a failing grade, not even a gentleman's, like, let's see, or we're in the like D and F category, unfortunately. Which is why we actually are focused on all of you, our target audience. This is, and something else we learned sort of early on is that students who are just entering sort of college or just graduating or just getting into the workforce, they need some time to get up to the levels and positions and experience that all of you have. So let's try to find a program and a way to reach all of you where you are right now and see how we can help you contribute to the solutions to the climate crisis. So next slide. Again, why now? And I alluded to this sort of United Nations global sort of recognition that we need to act. A lot of that traces that sort of global consensus on action really traces to the Paris Agreement in 2015, that collectively we need to try to hold temperatures well below 2 degrees Celsius, and to the extent we can, to about 1.5 degrees. there are a number of ways to get there. I do like quoting Jesse Jenkins from Princeton, who focused in on at least the energy sort of side of the house, with 4 sort of key steps to getting there. 1, deploy as much wind, solar, batteries, and demand flexibility as we can, as fast as we can. 2, end coal power. That is our dirtiest and most polluting sort of form of electricity right now. 3, keep nuclear and some gas for grid stability for particularly the next 10 years or so. 4, on the topic of the grid, build a bigger, better, faster, smarter grid to handle particularly this explosion in renewables. And then 5, innovate for the future. And we think that our program actually addresses basically all sort of 5 of those elements. Next slide. I do like coming back to this sort of grounding in the science and the sort of global consensus. The 2018 was a moment in time where the IPCC talked about what it means. What are our pathways? What do we have to do in the next by 2030 and by 2050 to really achieve dramatic reductions in greenhouse gases? Next slide. And they had 4 different sort of broad pathways. This is one of my favorite sort of slides from this sort of foundational report that came out in 2018. The big takeaway is that we need to reduce our use of fossil fuels pretty quickly. That's the sort of gray shaded area in each of these graphs. But we also need to invest in, so that will happen through investments in low carbon energy technologies and energy efficiency that needs to really increase dramatically. The other thing I want to note is that stuff below the line, the yellow sort of shaded area, that's negative emissions. That could be carbon capture and other sorts of things. We need to actually draw down things from the atmosphere. That's part of that future, innovation technology space as well. Next slide. So, or next, I think you go one more click maybe in the slide. There, great. Our program is about the energy sector and the energy mix, and we still have this sort of, what's being called for is increasing the share of renewable energy by 2030 up to pretty dramatic, percentages, like over 50% of our energy coming from renewables by 2030 and 80 or more percent coming from renewables by 2050. And you can see declines necessarily in coal and oil and other sort of elements. So that's really why. How do we deploy that much clean energy as fast as we can? Next slide. It's going to take investment, significant investment. According to the International Energy Agency, it's going to need upwards of $4 trillion per year invested in the clean energy economy by 2030 to stay on track to our goals of net zero globally by 2050. So that's investments of, about $1.5 trillion a year in clean electricity. That's, getting up to $820 billion a year in clean transportation, $90 billion a year in EV charging infrastructure. Again, all by 2030. This is a dramatic now 6 years. Because again, I'm refusing to admit that we're in 2024 already, but that clock is sort of ticking pretty dramatically. So how are we doing? Well, this graph is actually one of my favorites. It's from early 2023. They haven't quite issued their 2024 version, so they're like me in denial that we're in 2024 from Bloomberg New Energy Finance. But we pulled some other data from the International Energy Agency that says that sort of helps on that upward trajectory. It's a great path. We're improving. We're doing a good job. But think about it. Even at the 1.7 trillion invested in clean energy in 2023, it's still about half of where we need to be, according to the projections, to really keep our emissions where we want them to be. So that's a lot about, that's the financing and deploying of clean energy. How are we mobilizing capital into that space? That's the spirit and what drives our program. Next slide. Next slide, thanks. So policy, one back. policy is that's law and policy. That's my sort of passion. You could see I already am smiling and get sort of excited about this part of the way we are going to address this. Interesting new world in the United States. The federal government, and particularly the Biden administration, has decided that the climate crisis is part of their all-of-government approach to, the way they're doing business or acting as a government. And they're doing it as well with their Justice 40 initiative, trying to address equity and injustice historically that has existed in energy policy and climate policy, trying to ensure that this transformation of our economy and society reaches all of our society in the process. Now, there's been this steady sort of movement of significant dollars going way back actually into the COVID stimulus. But to me, the bipartisan infrastructure law bill and the Inflation Reduction Act, IRA, which I've heard folks often joke they're like two old guys sitting on a bench in Central Park, Bill and Ira, who are like spelling over the sort of what's going on in sort of the climate crisis. So Bill and Ira represent this massive new federal investment in and sort of catalytic effect of the federal government on critical things like investments in our electric grid, like investments in charging infrastructure, like over $400 billion for clean energy tax cuts and investments in clean energy products and manufacturing. That's again what's so interesting about being in our program right now is this is such a dynamic sort of movement in the US, and the US has influenced the global sort of efforts on this front. And they've been looking at the US and sort of copying it in some places or competing with the US in other places. So this is really a dynamic that's happening across the world. And Coral, I see that like you can just go to the next one. So I think this is almost where I'm about to hand off. And I know I've been going rapid fire this morning, and I'm seeing off to the side. I multitask. I have two screens, and there's lots of great questions. Keep them coming, the Q&A, because my sort of last sort of pitch to you is that we don't need to figure out the perfect sort of investments or systems. But we need everyone to imperfectly try to make progress towards clean energy deployment. And that's really comes from our understanding that we need everyone. We need policymakers. And we need policymakers who understand finance. And we need financiers who can evaluate technology and political risks. And we need engineers who know what the policy context is for the new thing that they're inventing or helping create. And we need an engaged nonprofit sector to advocate for rapid deployment and acceleration of that deployment, which is why we've sort of built the FDCE program to touch on all of these issues. And there will be ones that you all have tremendous depth and expertise, but others where you'll be learning, and vice versa for all your colleagues. And that's, I think, part of what Heather and Trent are going to start talking about is the importance of you as members of the cohort, in addition to sort of hearing from us in the program. That's what I've always loved about the program, is that network of folks who are this sort of structure that helps sort of guide one another. So that's enough for me for now. I'm staying on, obviously, to through the rest, but I'll pass it over, I think, to Trent. Are you up next?
Yes,
Trent.
yes. Thank you, Rob. Teed me up perfectly, and reference to network almost as if you knew this slide was coming. So we're really fortunate to be bringing you this program from our space here at the intersection of the Yale School of the Environment and the School of Management. We're lucky enough to have this vast and powerful network available to us. And some of these folks you see here on this slide are really only just like a fraction of the faculty and external partners that we've kind of been working with and have been involved in the creation delivery of this program over the years. So I want to point your attention to Rob there. You might have found him within the network, bottom of the screen, front and center. He, of course, leads our clean energy policy course, and we'll get more into how some of these courses look a little bit here. But we really wanted to present this web to you, not just as a nod to all of these folks' fantastic contributions, but also as a bit of a visual representation of how this subject matter is interrelated. So let's go on to the next slide. All right. So first, I think it's a good roadmap of sorts. Maybe we can like reference that timeline that we have there at the very bottom of the screen. That's going to note some of the important dates that are associated with this 2024-2025 program cycle. The program you'll see is about 10 months long. It may not look that way right there, but you know, accounting for breaks, about 10 months long. And it's a blend of self-paced, asynchronous, and synchronous courses. Starting over there on the far left, you're going to see that acronym HTSO. That stands for How to Study Online. And the purpose of that course, it's a short one, is really just get you acclimated with learning in an online environment. I mean, we see folks come to us and find that course helpful because a lot of us haven't really been in a web-based academic environment for quite some time. So it's really kind of just set up there to, help you get your bearings before you jump into the actual like meat and potatoes. After How to Study Online, you'd move on to orientation, which is really set up to introduce you to your fellow cohort members and members of the Yale community, including faculty and staff. It's 1 week long. There are mandatory midday sessions throughout that week. And then we also have several optional sessions as well that, together those should aid you in setting you up for success in the program. I really think it is the best way to start off the program. It's we'll be the first to acknowledge that being in an online environment can be isolating. That's just the fact of the matter. And so at the very start of the orientation week and just forward through the program, we will just really hammer home the point that we set this program up to have kind of at its heart this community building effort. And we'll hear a little bit more about how we make that happen in just a couple moments here. But orientation is set up to be this opportunity for you to like kind of share your experience as you're coming into the program, and then maybe you can share out with others what you'd like to glean from the program and its activities. So then once we close orientation, we'll then hopefully all be diving into the coursework with this like renewed hunger for learning. And you're going to start off with the Energy Foundations course. That's the first of 2 foundations courses that we have in this program that both act as kind of like primers for core coursework. Energy Foundations is going to be kind of focused on familiarizing yourself with fundamental energy concepts. You're going to kind of warm up a bit and then enter Clean Energy Policy, which is led by none other than Professor Rob Klee. Rob has already introduced himself. We love working with Rob. I always say we don't like playing favorites with professors, but really, I mean, between me and everybody on this call, we couldn't start out with anybody better than Rob. Really enjoy working with him. And this course, like all of our core courses, is 8 weeks long. So you'll get 8 weeks of Rob. And the overarching goal is to kind of learn about this role that policy plays in shaping our transition to a clean energy economy. The one piece of coursework that I like to highlight is the policy memo, and that's where we ask the participants of the program to write into their local or national policymakers on a topic of their choice. You don't have to actually write in. It's an exercise in creating this policy memo, but we do encourage folks to actually kind of push those forward. And if they would like to submit them to those policymakers that they wrote to, that's excellent, and we would love to support you in doing that if you so choose. After you finish up Clean Energy Policy, you'll move on to Technology Transitions, the second of our core course offerings. That one's led by Professor Michael Orostalio. He's a senior research scientist and scholar of Earth and planetary sciences here at Yale. He's also the co-founder of our inaugural he's the co-founder and inaugural director, of the Energy Studies Multidisciplinary academic program. So this unit, it's a bit more quantitative, we like to say, than our Clean Energy Policy unit. So let's say if you're, I don't know, a lobbyist, or you're working on Capitol Hill, that policy memo assignment in the Clean Energy Policy course might have been your bread and butter. I mean, that you might have really taken to that. But then as you turn to tech transitions, some of those assignments might become a little bit more difficult at first. And our message is always, don't worry. So like I mentioned, that community building effort that begins in orientation, we have a fantastic support system in place for you. So in case you do run into any challenges, that support is there. That course, though, focuses more on kind of the understanding which energy technologies we have available to us. how they work, and then what their associated limitations might be as we're, again, taking these steps towards a low-carbon future. Once you finish tech transitions, now we're at the halfway point of the program, and you have, as you can see there, about a month-long winter break. And we ask, as folks head into that winter break, that's the time of year everybody, maybe not everybody, but like folks are thinking about goal setting, New Year's resolutions. We ask that folks take some time to kind of reflect on their accomplishments in the program thus far. And that doesn't mean like you don't have to host or hold like a little like marathon review session for yourself or re-quiz yourself on everything that you've covered. But rather take some time, take stock of your progress, and then kind of look ahead at the back half of the program. Speaking of which, as you come back from break, you will enter our second foundation course, and that's Finance Foundations, which again, primer for renewable energy project finance. That one is where you're kind of just, you're familiarizing yourself with fundamental concepts of energy finance. And if you don't work in Excel a bunch, you will get familiar with working in Excel again, because that is a major part of our renewable energy project finance course, which is led by Professor Dan Gross. He is a lecturer here at Yale, but he also wears the hat of being Amazon's, the director of Amazon's Climate Pledge Fund. Don't know how he finds the time. We're really thankful for Dan, and people really do take to this course. They love this course. In that course, you're going to be kind of learning a little bit more about the foundational principles of project finance, both from the perspective of the renewable energy investor as well as the perspective of the developer. And then now we're 3/4 of the way through the coursework. You will move from renewable energy project finance to innovation. And that is going to be innovation in all of the kind of subject matter that we've covered so far, or the main topics of study that we've covered so far. So that's innovation in policy, innovation in technology, and innovation in finance. The core question, the overarching question that we're trying to answer there is, how do you create this market for clean tech and move capital where it needs to go? And we kind of start out with this emphasis on green banks. And I will say, for those of you who are interested in green banks, I will note that we actually have some of our friends and former participants of the FDCE program attending one of our Ask Me Anything sessions that's coming up on February 15th. So if that's of interest to you, or even if green banks aren't of interest to you, please do sign up for those Ask Me Anything sessions that are coming up. Next slide, please. I'm not seeing it just yet. Give us a moment. All right, there it is. All right. So somehow we fit all of this that we've been talking about into 10 months. Kind of mind-boggling even on our end to think about sometimes, but I'll let you kind of know how we do that in just a moment here. But let's just take kind of like a deeper dive into this curriculum and see how it integrates a little bit. So again, I mentioned we have those 2 foundations courses. That's where you're going to get an introduction to basic energy units, learn things like bond math, maybe learn how to better understand and apply the time value of money, the laws of thermodynamics, and maybe learn a little bit about thermal and electrical efficiency. Then you'll move on to the core coursework. So for example, if you're in CEP, you might learn about utility business models and challenges associated with energy efficiency programs. Then you'll move into tech transitions, where you'll get a better idea of the effects of efficiency interventions on energy systems. Then you'll move into renewable energy project finance. Of course, after that, finance foundations unit that will prepare you. And you'll get a chance in renewable energy project finance to maybe review the ways that projects sell electricity to the grid, and maybe take a look at concepts of risk allocation and power purchase agreements. And then you'll finish things up with innovation, and you might, there consider and replicate models for scaling efficiency programs. So that's kind of like an overview of how you might integrate some of the content that you might learn throughout each of our courses. Next slide, please. And this is my final slide. All right. So just simple graphic here is I'm giving you a quick breakdown of your kind of commitments throughout the program, both kind of these weekly mandatory commitments as well as some of the optional things that you can get into as well. So to fit all of this into 10 months for you all as potential program participants, you'd be coming to the program, and within those core courses, working through about one module of content per week. And so one module will match up with each of the 8 weeks of the course. We've set that up, each of those 8 weeks, to take what we call the quote unquote average Yale learner about 5 hours per week. There is, before we go any further, no such thing as an average Yale learner. Like, we'll be the first to acknowledge that. But the average person should take around 5 hours per week to get through the content. And you see the breakdown there. So about 2 to 3 hours should be spent on just working your way through content. And that content will include reading, quizzes, some discussion questions, and then we'll also have 1 to 2 hours of video playback. We also have a 1 hour live session every Thursday, midday here. And that's usually where a Yale faculty member, a guest expert, or if we're lucky, sometimes both. Sometimes the faculty member will even interview the guest expert and then take questions from the audience. Those are sessions that we have every week. Those are mandatory. And then some of the weekly constants for you. By and large, all of our assignments are released on Mondays at noon. You then have about 1 week to work on those. There are some key exceptions to those, like some of the larger assignments, like that policy memo I mentioned. But for the most part, assignments are released Mondays at noon, then due the following Monday just before noon. Again, we have those live sessions that I just mentioned. And then we do have a support system that I've referenced several times now, and you're probably wondering, like, what is this secretive support system? That is made up of what we call our teaching team, and that is Heather and myself, kind of leading the delivery of some of the content. Our professors, as their time allows, of course, and then we have a fantastic team of teaching assistants that together all of us make up this teaching team. The teaching assistants will offer optional office hours every week. We try to make sure that they're nice and spread out so that folks are able to attend those. And then sometimes, again, as time allows, faculty members will sometimes offer office hours as well. And those are, again, optional. And then in addition to that, I want to say that we do go ahead and try to organize various events and networking opportunities in addition to just your time online. So I was saying it can be a little bit isolating, or feel as though you're in a bit of a bubble if you're studying online. So we do want to try to offer some opportunities for networking throughout the year. The biggest one that comes to mind is our Yale Clean Energy Conference, which just this past fall we held. And in association with that, we actually held our first ever FDCE alumni reunion. So we'll probably try to hold a couple of those again in the future. But the conference was a blast, and we've really been thinking about that. Got us thinking about how we might be able to support similar meetups of FDCEers throughout the year. So those are just kind of some things that are coming down the pipeline for us. I will pause there, and I will turn things over to Heather, who's going to be able to tell you a little bit more about the FDCE community, maybe give you a peek at some of our participant demographics, and then detail a little bit about our admissions process and applying.
Thank you, Trent. Coral, I'm going to share my screen for a moment, and then I'll go back to you for the slides. So this is a sneak peek at our online learning platform called Canvas. And this is every single course that Trent just talked about will be housed right on this platform. And they all sort of have this similar look to them. They'll look a little bit like this. This is our Clean Energy Policy course. That's the first of the core courses Trent mentioned. And so you'll see for each course, you'll see sort of a breakdown, a week by week breakdown. We call them modules. So each week is its own module. And you'll be able to download a more detailed curriculum summary in lieu of a syllabus. And then you'll see every week has this sort of breakdown checklist. So I want to sort of show you what you might be expected to do in any given week for this course, and sort of what that workload looks like that Trent was talking about. So you'll see this is a checklist of 26 items, which can look a little intimidating, but don't worry, we break them down into smaller pieces so that you can take the course sort of bite by bite throughout the week. So you'll see there's lecture videos. So each of these is about 10 minutes long or so of these individual lectures. A little bit more than 10 minutes, the actual lecture videos. But then you'll see in between there are discussions. So you'll have the opportunity to interact with your peers in discussion boards. There are regular quizzes. Some of the quizzes are a little bit more, a little bit of a bigger assignment. And then some quizzes are just to check your learning and see how you're doing with the material. And readings, there are optional readings, there are required readings, just like any other sort of university course you might have taken in the past. And then you'll see some of these further down. You'll see here our live session, as Trent was talking about. Every week we have a live session, and that's where you will join the session every week live. Those are required for you to be there at 12 noon our time, so Eastern Standard Time. And there will also be the recordings, and the slides will always be available for your reference later on as well. And then you'll see like office hours. We were just talking about the teaching assistants hold regular office hours. You'll be able to access them there. Everything that you need, and like you'll access the course, the live sessions directly from Canvas. Everything is like housed right here. There's lots of resources and additional resources for you every week. So this is just like a sneak peek of 1 week. They don't all look like this. Some of them have, 15 items. Some of them have 25 items. But it breaks down to approximately that 5 to 6 hours per week that Trent mentioned. Now, I wanted to also talk to you a little bit about our network. Trent had mentioned some of our networking opportunities, and it sounds from the Q&A like we have a pretty big international audience even with us right here. So we'll talk a little bit more about our program demographics, but this is our Clean Energy Collaborative, what we call our community platform. And this is sort of the just large network of everybody who has been in the FDCE program, and in addition to that, faculty, students, and staff at Yale who are involved in this Yale Clean Energy Collaborative. So you see a lot of folks here in the Northeast. That's because there's lots of Yale folks. But then as you zoom out, you can see the people from all around the world who've participated in this program and who are doing work all around the world in clean energy. And this community platform, once you are in the program, all of these will open up to you. You'll see there are events that we have regularly that many of them are virtual, so you can attend from anywhere. You'll also see like some news and then groups. There are individual groups that are set up for each of the cohorts. And so that's where you will do a lot of like interacting with your own cohort and networking amongst yourselves. So I'm going to stop sharing that for now, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the demographics. Oh, you can go to the next slide. There we go. So this current cohort right now, the one that we're in, has 115 total participants. And you can see that the split between people who have, less than 10 years experience versus more than 10 years experience is pretty evenly split. And so, wherever you are in your career, I think you can see that there may be somewhere that you fit into this program. You could fit into this program regardless of your experience level. And I think, Rob had touched on that diversity that's really important to this particular program and to CBAE. We're taking, we have people from all different industries. So like the biggest group of people works in the power sector, but that's followed closely by people who work in finance and consulting. We also have a fair number of people who work in nonprofits or the public sector, people who work in advocacy, civil engineering, lobbying, administration, sort of you name it. If there is something that is related to clean energy, we've had people who have been part of this program and have benefited from it. So that's, and we'll go to the next slide to talk a little bit more about our international folks. So we have 30 countries represented just in this cohort. So this is a large international cohort. I think about at least a third of participants are not from the US this year. And so people have asked in the Q&A, you know, is this program relevant to people who are not based in the US? And the answer is absolutely yes. We have people from all over. And, you know, this diversity is extremely important to our mission. And there are also 10 full tuition scholarships available for those in the Global South. So specifically, we are focusing on those areas that are especially hard hit by climate change at the moment. And next slide. All right, just a quick wrap up. Hopefully you have all made your way to this page at some point, or you have made your way at least to our certificate website. But I wanted to point out, if you want more information about the actual application process, you can go right to our website, seedbay.yale.edu/certificate. And over on the left panel there, you'll find all sorts of information, and you'll find the link to our application. And you can also further along in that page, what you can't see is like there is a checklist that you can download that's, you know, getting ready to apply. And so we encourage you to do that as early as possible in the process, because it does take some time. There are transcripts and gathering involved, and references that you might need to request. So take a look at that. And next slide. This is just to answer a question that a lot of people have, is what does the certificate look like? What do you get at the end of the program? If you successfully meet all of the requirements of the program, you will receive a certificate of completion that says Yale School of the Environment and the Yale School of Management. And it is doesn't come with grades or transcripts. So it is, you know, it's a complete or incomplete. So if you successfully meet the requirements, you'll receive this certificate. And you'll see over on the right there, that's just a little snapshot of some interactions on the community platform. So I had talked about those groups that are available to you on the community platform, where you would talk amongst yourselves in the cohort, and that's the kind of interactions you might be having on there. And I will pass it to Coral because we have our special guest with us.
Sure thing. So we're going to transition into our question and answer session. I've been trying to respond to some of the questions that have been written and submitted. So hopefully you have a chance to review those responses. You'll be able to raise your hand if you have further questions. But including, there are a number of folks who have written kind of describing their particular like background and experience, and if this program is right for them. So I think what would be really helpful, rather than responding to specific scenarios, to have you hear from a participant themselves on what that experience was like. We have the pleasure of having Chris Caldwell here, whose background is quite diverse. So this will be broadly applicable to folks. So Chris, you know, you've worked in law, you you also have some experience in finance. You're also working in communications, as well as getting some insights into the development process of renewable projects. So I think it's really a wonderful to have you here. So thank you for joining us. Perhaps you can share with us first, like what drew you to the FDCE program, and think about, like, there are many people on the call right now who you were in their position at one time thinking, is this the right program for me? Maybe you can let us know why you chose the FDCE program, or why you think they ought to choose the FDCE program.
Oh, you're muted, Chris.
Muted, Chris.
Dear, oh dear, I'm supposed to be in communications, you know, I'm supposed to be someone who's good at this type of thing, but no, clearly inept. But so I am one of the nerds that Rob mentioned at the start of this. I've got a deep passion for clean energy, deep passion for sustainability. I did come from a background in law, and then spent 10 odd years in investment banking, but please don't hold that against me. I'm actually a nice guy. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about what I wanted to do with my life. But like post all of those, so I went up to an MBA, and so I was quite good at law. I was quite good at business, and I brought that experience into starting a business, which was, oddly enough, financing and deploying clean energy. But I never had a proper rigorous academic background in that particular field. So I was always on the lookout for something very much like this program. When it came across, it didn't take an awful lot of persuasion to figure out, well, Yale, like, it's a pretty good place to be associated with. So I kind of dug in. I do firmly believe in lifelong learning and the value of personal growth, professional growth through continuous education, and also believe in you can form fantastic relationships and networks within institutions. When the opportunity to become kind of associated with Yale came up through this program, looked at the headlines of the program, did a little bit of digging into who was doing the courses, because like you can have one thing where you've got a great brand name, but if they don't bring out their A team for the lectures, you can end up maybe getting a slightly subpar experience. In this case, it is the A team, like Dan Gross, Rob Clee, Dan Esty. They are really all fantastic people to be learning from. They are some of the most in-demand lecturers from the Yale School of Management and the Yale School of the Environment. So it is the great people to be learning from. And Yale itself, well, we will all know Yale as an institution. In having a look, they are absolutely unique in their ability to be combining the business and the environmental side of the climate crisis. The climate crisis is a crisis. It is the greatest threat that we're facing for a generation, but it's also the greatest opportunity that we're facing in our generation. And previously, from my undergrad, I was in Trinity College Dublin. They were fantastically good at the science side of it, and the understanding kind of the human ecosystems and the natural ecosystems, tipping points, all of that's the side of things. And I'm actually sitting here from London Business School, which is where I did my MBA, and they're fantastically good at the business side of it. What makes Yale absolutely unique is tying the two of them in together. So when the opportunity came to do this in a very material way, spending 10 months of in-depth learning, you had to jump in and try and do it. So it is a great experience. You end up picking up an awful lot from some fantastic lectures. And the networking side of it, which was mentioned before, is something that they are very, very good at. Like the Clean Energy Conference each year is a great opportunity for meeting people, forming connections. I don't think it was actually mentioned, but it's at least maybe it was sheer accent. I'm sure it wasn't, Trent. I'm sure it was deliberately by design. But we were put in study groups with people who were in the same kind of time zones and rough locales. So we were able to meet up and to form kind of individual relationships with like real life human beings in the flesh, which was great. And then you go to these conferences and you get to meet up with your classmates, like people you would have spent a lot of time with in study groups, and learning from very diverse backgrounds, from policy, from engineering, from finance, and it is a very, very interesting cohort to be a part of, and I do genuinely feel part of the Yale community coming out of it. So I honestly I can't recommend it more highly.
Yeah, so
I can keep
Chris,
on going, but I'll stop.
Chris, some background on those working groups that Trent and Heather designed for you all. We do that based not just on time zones, but we'll choose time zones as one of them for one of the courses. And then when we get into another course, we will suggest groups based on diversity of experience, so you can get that experience and connections as well. And then we have a policy memo assignment in Rob Klee's Clean Energy Policy course. And we go through a peer review process, and we team you up with folks that have some similar ideas, so you can bounce ideas off of each other to help you refine your policy recommendations. And then there's also a final assignment, so in which you work as a team on a pitch. We have a pitch competition at the end of the program, in which you have a diverse set of cohort members, and you work on a project and pitch it in our final live session. So great opportunities during the program to network. And I'm glad you brought up the Clean Energy Conference. So we have a Yale Clean Energy Conference that happens every year, and that is on campus. We highly encourage you all to come. We also have some activities that are designed just for FDCE folks during that conference. And then tell us, Chris, what did you do the last time you came to the Yale Clean Energy Conference?
Oh, thank you very much for the lead-in, Carol. So I also, amidst my extremely busy day job, I also try to find time to do a bit of Atlantic communications and do some writing. And I host a podcast. And I was delighted for the last two clean energy conferences to be able to interview some like notable people from Yale. Going back to the previous conference, I interviewed Zoe Chance, who she's professor of it's not negotiation, it's influence, a professor of influence in the Yale School of Management, the most highly sought after professor who in the Yale School of Management for electives. And she sat down and spent like massively generously to me as a FDCE participant, and gave an interview for the podcast. It was wonderful. Everyone should go and look at it. Zoe Chance, she's amazing. Conversations on Climate. And then most recently we sat down with Rob, who you've heard from, Stuart, who's another kind of main driver behind this course. And what was also mentioned was the Connecticut Green Bank. We had two of the leading people, including the CEO and head of innovation, Brian and Sarah, who spent, again, massively generously, an hour and a half talking me through the ins and outs of the Green Bank, its foundations. And like the Green Bank itself is the kind of physical representation of everything that Yale and CBAE stands for. It is finance meets innovation, meets business, meets technology. Some of this, like, these were two incredibly smart people, and if they were working in Goldman Sachs, they'd be driving around in like diamond-plated cars. It's just incredible. Like the talents that was tied up, and the inspiration that they gave me, and the way they thought about how to take big checks of federal money and getting it into like solar panels on roofs. Like they're remarkable people. Please go and have a look at Brian Garcia and Sarah Harari, Connecticut Green Bank, again on Conversations on Climate. We also did some interviews with some FDCE alumni, which hasn't been released yet, but again, it'll be out in 2 weeks, I believe. Yes, it will be in two weeks on Friday. And again, you can get some really great insights of the quality people that are on this program. 4 fantastic conversations, and look forward to be releasing that as well.
Thank you so much, Chris, for sharing your perspectives. These conversations, particularly when you can hear from somebody who's been through the program or is currently in the program, is really helpful when you're making those decisions. And so I'd like you all to invite you all again. We have several more events coming up. We call them Ask Me Anything events, where we're not there. We're going to step out of the room, and you are going to be able to, and it won't be held in a webinar format. It's held as a Zoom meeting. So you all can ask questions and be able to, Chatham House rules, you can be in there and ask all your interesting, maybe even controversial questions, get a real insider perspective on what it's like to go through the program. So please be on the lookout for those events and register for them. And then also, if you do decide to apply and are admitted, there'll also be an open house event that for all admitted learners for you to help you make that final decision. So there are plenty of opportunities to get to know a bit more about the perspectives of others who have been through the program. We will also, as Chris mentioned, there's a bit of a podcast there's a podcast coming out soon, which we'll share with you all. Everyone who's registered for this webinar will send out some links to you all, so you can hear it from them as well. And those events are also helpful for you to ask questions like, how much did we really get into this particular content, or how would this help me as a professional in XYZ background? To get to, let's see, there was, I believe it's, and there's some questions about the content, specifically where we delve in. Please check out our website. We do have a breakdown of the curriculum week by week in which you can see the content that we cover. I will highlight, however, this industry is moving really quickly, right? There are things that are happening on the ground that we just can't turn around into a lecture video quite as fast. And so we have live sessions once a week during the core courses, and that's where we all get together, and those sessions are led by a faculty member, or we also invite industry leaders to come to those sessions and share their perspectives. And those are wonderful times to get engaged in those conversations about how, for example, how the IRA is really being implemented. What does that look like? What are the challenges and opportunities there? And then there's also a number of optional events that we host throughout the year that you're invited to. And the office hours with your faculty or your teaching assistants are excellent times to dive in. And there's, for example, one of the FDCE learners had office hours with a faculty member, Michael Aristiglio, and they bounced some ideas off of each other, and they ended up filing for a patent on a new technology. So, I mean, there's really a lot of opportunity here for networking, for you to dive in and geek out or nerd out onto these different topics and stay abreast of what is happening in this transition. It is 1 o'clock, so we are at the hour. That is all for us today. We're really excited and delighted that you took your time out of your day to learn a bit more about the FDCE program, and we really look forward to reviewing all of your applications.
Great to see everyone.